After graduating from college, Tom found a job in a big city. To save on rent, he moved in with a friend who lived in the suburbs. One day, his boss asked him to work late. When he finished, it was already 11:30 p.m. Tom rushed to the subway station, knowing that the last train left at midnight. If he missed it, he wouldn't be able to get back to his friend's house. He arrived at the station at 11:50 p.m., just as a train pulled away. He was the only one left on the platform. Tom went to the restroom, and when he came out, the last train was waiting. The doors opened, and he stepped inside. The train was empty. He found a seat and closed his eyes for a nap. In his drowsy state, he felt the train start moving. It seemed to be going very fast, but it didn't stop at any of the usual stations. The announcement system was also turned off. Tom didn't think much of it, figuring he was going to the last stop anyway, and whether it skipped stations or not didn't concern him. He woke up a while later and was startled by what he saw. The train, which had been empty when he boarded, was now packed with people. Young people were standing, while elderly people were seated in an orderly manner. The strange thing was that everyone was dressed in ancient costumes of various colors and styles. Tom thought he must have accidentally gotten on a train with a Peking opera troupe returning from a performance. As he was thinking this, an elderly woman in an elegant costume walked towards him. She politely asked him where he was going. He told her he was going to his friend's house at the last stop. The woman said she was also going to the last stop and asked him to wake her up when they arrived, as she was tired and wanted to rest. Tom agreed. The train continued on its journey. Tom checked his watch and realized they still had some time before reaching the last stop, so he grabbed a handrail and closed his eyes again. When he opened them, the train was slowing down, and only he and the elderly woman remained. He wondered how everyone else had gotten off without the train stopping. Had he slept through it? Tom woke the woman up. The train stopped and the doors opened. He helped the woman off the train. She smiled and told him she was fine and didn't need his help. Then she walked away with surprisingly quick steps. Tom hurried after her, worried that she might fall. Outside the station, the woman asked him how far he lived from there. He said it was quite far, over an hour's walk, and he wouldn't get home until 2 a.m., leaving him with very little sleep before having to wake up at 5 a.m. The woman offered him a place to stay at her house, saying she had plenty of spare rooms. Tom initially refused, saying he couldn't afford it, but the woman insisted, saying he could pay if he had money, and if not, it was fine. Seeing her sincerity, Tom accepted. The woman's house was close to the station. They arrived after a few minutes' walk. It was a large old mansion with countless rooms. However, the courtyard was dimly lit, and he couldn't see much. The woman led him into a room lit by several large candles and asked him to rest. Tom looked around the room. It was elegantly furnished with antique redwood furniture and beautiful porcelain pieces. He thought they must be worth a fortune if they were real. The woman pointed to a large bed and said he could sleep there. She would have a maid bring him some water to wash his feet. Tom quickly stood up, took out 50 yuan, and offered it to her, saying it was for the room. The woman looked at the money and laughed, asking what kind of money it was, and if he thought she was dead. Tom was taken aback. He looked at the money in his hand. There was nothing wrong with it. What did the woman mean? He wanted to explain, but she had already turned and left. A short while later, a young maid brought in a basin of hot water. The maid was very pretty. She placed the basin on the floor and was about to take off Tom's shoes. He stopped her, saying he would do it himself, and asked her to leave. The maid looked at him with wide eyes for a moment, giggled, and left. Tom washed his feet and went to sleep. In his half-awake state, he felt something moving beside him. He opened his eyes and saw the young maid, naked, trying to get into his bed. He sat up quickly and asked her what she was doing, telling her he wasn't interested and that she should leave. The maid just smiled at him, put on her clothes, and left. Before dawn, the elderly woman was calling him from outside, saying it was time to wash and that the first subway train was about to leave. They should go. Tom got up and followed the woman out of the courtyard. As they walked to the station, he asked her why she was up so early. She said she had been busy with something lately and had to take the first train in the morning and the last train at night. Tom asked her what she was doing, but she wouldn't tell him. They entered the subway station and boarded the first train. Like the last train, it went directly from the starting station to the last stop without stopping in between. This time, Tom stayed awake the whole way. He saw clearly that the people on the train were still dressed in clothes from different dynasties. They all had serious expressions and didn't speak. The train didn't stop anywhere, but the number of passengers seemed to fluctuate, appearing and disappearing without him noticing how. Tom felt uneasy and asked the elderly woman what was going on. She whispered that he should just mind his own business. Strange things happened all the time, and it was best to ignore what you couldn't understand. Tom thought she was right. What did it matter who these people were? For several days, Tom continued to encounter the elderly woman on the last train. She always invited him to stay at her house. He said he felt bad about staying for free and wanted to go back to his friend's place. The woman sighed and said he should stay, as he wouldn't be able to for much longer. She confessed that her house was about to be demolished, and her entire family of hundreds would be homeless. It was a 2,000-year-old house, and she lamented that they could demolish it just like that, with no one to appeal to. Tom was also angry when he heard this. He said a 2,000-year-old house was a historical building and shouldn't be demolished so easily. He wanted to start an online discussion to raise awareness and pressure the authorities to change their plans. The woman was pleased and asked if it would be effective. Tom said online opinions could be powerful, and if netizens opposed the demolition, there was a chance it could be stopped. She encouraged him to try. If they didn't demolish the house, she would thank him properly. Tom got to work. Every night, he stayed up late, posting on online forums about the woman's house. His posts quickly gained traction, with many netizens expressing their opposition to the demolition. He was hopeful that with enough public pressure, the authorities would take notice. However, a few days later, the elderly woman came to see him with a gloomy expression. She said her house was still going to be demolished, and nothing could stop it. She had been trying to find a powerful relative who could help, but even his house was facing demolition, so he couldn't do anything for her. The woman then took out a pair of small jade cicadas and said that although his efforts hadn't been successful, she still wanted to thank him for trying. She offered him one of the jade cicadas, saying it was a family heirloom. If he ever saw the other one somewhere, it would be like seeing her. He could sell it and buy a house, and they could be good neighbors. Tom could tell that the jade cicada was made of high-quality jade, translucent and beautiful. It must be worth a lot. He felt uncomfortable accepting it, but the woman insisted. She told him not to come to her house anymore because it wouldn't be there tomorrow. In the following days, Tom's work schedule changed, and he no longer had to take the last train. When he told his friend about his experiences on the first and last trains, his friend was shocked. He said, as far as he knew, those trains were always empty and never carried passengers. It had been a rule ever since a train mysteriously disappeared over a decade ago. Tom was stunned. If the first and last trains were always empty, how had he gotten on? Who were the people on the train? One day, while riding the subway, Tom overheard a news report about a Han Dynasty tomb complex discovered near the last subway station. They had unearthed a large number of artifacts during the construction of a new building. The most incredible discovery was the body of a noblewoman in one of the coffins. She had been dead for 2,000 years, but her body was perfectly preserved, as if she had just died. Her face was rosy, her hair was black, and her muscles were still elastic. In her arms, she held a priceless jade cicada. Historical records indicated it was a gift from Emperor Liu Bang himself, and it was supposed to be part of a pair. However, experts had searched the entire tomb complex and couldn't find the other one. Tom's scalp tingled. He asked where the jade cicada was now. The person said it was on display at the museum. Tom went to the museum and saw the jade cicada, along with a hairpin. The hairpin was identical to the one the elderly woman had worn in her hair. He remembered it clearly. Tom seemed to understand. He ran to a deserted area and cried his heart out. He made a silent vow that in the future he would ensure that all homeless people had a peaceful home.